Good morning, good evening, as the case may be. And as is usual on this podcast, we have folks from all around the world, between Sisla producing in India, me over in the west coast of the United States, and our guest today, Andrea Vianelli, over in Italy. So thank you very much for joining us today, Andrea. But before we get there, let me go ahead and take 1 minute for our sponsors. We have two, as per usual, and the first one is Sommelier Finance. Sommelier Finance, serving up the finest liquidity on Uniswap V3. Please go ahead and check out app.sommelier.finance today for the easiest way to add liquidity to Uniswap V3. And, I know folks that follow this podcast have been following Sommelier a little bit. We're going to be launching a mainnet sometime within the next 2 weeks. It will be slightly different from other Cosmos mainnet launches that you guys are familiar with, but we have a lot more information coming up soon. We've just completed a series of internal testnets as well as testnets with the initial validator set that look great. So a live gravity bridge from a Cosmos zone over to Ethereum, live soon. And the full Sommelier protocol live very soon as well. So we'll have more shows on that as that approaches. And our second sponsor today, I'm extremely excited about, is OmniFlix Media. OmniFlix Media Network builds a blockchain for creators to allow them to own their work and manage large volumes of different digital creative content. They just launched their testnet, which I believe has become the largest Cosmos chain that's ever been created, with around 700 validators live on that testnet. Extremely exciting. I'm very pumped for that. So congratulations to Sisla and team, and looking forward to having them on to talk about OmniFlix a little bit more here soon. Diet and Sisla, I'm coming for you. Okay, well, with that out of the way, Andrea, thank you very much for joining us today. Do you mind giving folks a little bit of an introduction and telling them about what you're working on?
For sure, with pleasure, and thank you very much for having me. It will be definitely fun. So I am a regulatory lawyer. I'm the head of legal at Amagis Capital Group. We are a fintech advisory group, also active in the traditional asset management field. So recently we have been, actually, since quite a while, in the last 3 years, we have been following crypto quite closely, and especially the launch of regulated structures across the EU, being these exchanges, brokers, as well as advising on ICOs and STOs. So then we, with great pleasure, came across the project of Cosmos, into which we are definitely very interested in and supporters as a key regulatory advisor. And I would be very glad today to have some talk about some recent work we have been doing with Tendermint and Cosmos about the Cosmos Cash protocol, which I don't know if you want very briefly to mention, or if I am free to kick off.
Oh yeah, please go ahead and sort of talk about however, and we'll dig into this kind of as we get into the show a little bit more, but yeah, however you'd like to introduce it, please feel free.
Fantastic. So what I think was quite interesting as a regulatory lawyer when thinking about Cosmos Cash is the nature of the project. So an idea of bridging what is the traditional crypto space with the traditional fiat space within a payment and investment services ecosystem. So very often, and due to the increasing change in regulation and the evolution in the regulation at EU level, but also at global level, is always very difficult to find a product which fits in the regulatory ecosystem and that can offer at the same time advantages and interesting opportunities for the community as a whole. And this is where I believe that Cosmos Cash fits in. We have been engaged and provided our assistance with trying to identify and design the field where Cosmos Cash could operate in the future, the main challenges, but the main advantages as well of having such a product in the market in the coming months and hopefully even earlier.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, and there's a bunch of stuff I'm looking forward to digging into there. But you mentioned that your background is almost entirely in traditional finance, and you've kind of come to crypto over the last 3 years. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about that journey, and if there's any things in particular that sort of brought you closer to this space?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the main trend now in the financial markets is try to find innovation. This is something which is becoming more and more difficult if you want just to stick to the traditional finance, the traditional instruments, and if you just look at the traditional ecosystem, whereby I would say the ecosystem is kind of saturated, given that there are already a lot of players and a lot of products in the market. The reason for which we came across this market was because at the time our clients were trying to get exposure to crypto without having the right vehicle or the right instruments for doing so. So we started analyzing not only the type of instruments which can get investors, professional or not, closer to the space, but also the space itself. So the opportunities, the advantages, and the key features that such crypto industry can offer, and especially how the crypto space can dialogue with the traditional investment services space. Everything started, of course, with trying to understand how Bitcoin, because being the mainstream asset at the time, was let's say used in the space, if it was an investment product, if it was a payment solution, and then also focusing more on the application of blockchain for other non-typically payment-related applications. This led to, I think, expanding the knowledge and expanding our expertise on the field, and especially started attracting clients who came with interesting projects and made us think about this growing industry and how we can support and bring our insights. All of this actually ended up with getting a license in Malta for advising crypto players, given that Malta is one of, I think, the first regulatory frameworks applicable for crypto assets, offering regulatory certainty. But then at the same time, we followed quite closely the developments at the EU level with respect to crypto, notably the market in crypto asset regulation, which is expected to enter into force in the coming months.
Yeah, and I think that especially with the headlines over the last couple of weeks with Binance throughout the world, really, U.S. regulatory action, British regulatory action, EU regulatory action, Asian regulatory action on a number of fronts, the continual drumbeat of discussion within both the United States and America about KYC and AML, invisibility within crypto markets. This is really a hot topic. So, I think the first thing to kind of dig into with Cosmos Cash is the regulatory side of it. You guys have been working hard for a couple of years to find an acceptable regulatory framework to make we had Alessio on before to talk about Cosmos Cash, and I think it's come up a few times. But my understanding of the project is that it's sort of an SDK, i.e. a development kit for banks that want to launch their own blockchain that comes with the regulatory compliance pieces built in. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, even broader in the sense that not only banks would be affected, but also electronic money institutions. So without making names, there are a lot of those type of firms which are just a notch below banks, but can offer very interesting payment and wallet solutions to customers in Europe. I think a lot of so-called challenger banks are effectively having this type of regulatory license, with the main difference that they are not allowed to take deposits and grant credit. So, but other than that, the functionality in terms of payment is very similar to your bank credit card or debit card, which is issued by a bank. So I think the interesting point of what you were mentioning about issues which a lot of players are now having in terms of regulatory compliance is something that is very closely linked to the vision of some crypto players with regulation. So a lot of crypto players saw and actually still see regulation as something which hinders innovation, as well as something which is not compatible with technological disruption. And as such, they have adopted a stance which is quite, I would say, aggressive in terms of finding the best regulatory arbitrage, not being regulated or for choosing the lowest level of regulation possible. If this is the approach, in my view, this won't go much further, because if you look at the global regulatory landscape, especially under anti-money laundering standpoint, there are increasing controls and enforcement actions, as you pointed out before, which are all oriented at making crypto players falling into the regulatory perimeter and putting them very closely to the regulatory field whereby banks and traditional financial intermediaries work. So this is where the whole idea behind creating an ecosystem with Cosmos Cash for making traditional and institutional players adopting and embracing the crypto revolution stands. So here the idea behind Cosmos Cash is rather the opposite of what happened in the past, which was let's create an instrument which does not fall into a regulatory perimeter, so we are more free to move, we are more free in terms of fixed cost and compliance cost, everything can be done easier and faster. So Cosmos Cash is actually the opposite. The idea is let's come up with a great product which fits in the regulatory perimeter and reduces the regulatory risk when dealing with such a product. So Cosmos Cash being a protocol, the idea is to offer a kit, as you mentioned before, to regulated intermediaries who want to embrace the crypto revolution, but doing it in a compliant manner. This is something which is definitely done thanks to the great work of Cosmos guys in terms of tech development, but at the same time, the, I would say, very forward-looking and brave approach of Cosmos in saying, we want regulation, we want to comply with regulation. Even if we are like a disruptor, we want to be a good disruptor, let's call it this way. And that's where I think we try to give some help and some support in understanding how to move, where to move, and how to make a product compliant with the recent regulatory framework.
Something you just said there really kind of hits home for me, and I think that you come from a very different background from a lot of folks that I have on the show and a lot of folks in Cosmos, but this idea of moving society forward by not only working with existing laws, but sort of bringing this idea of decentralization and local control back to organizations. And I think that what Cosmos Cash promises is so in line with what Bucky and Jay and the other founders of this protocol initially had in mind. And we're going to have Bucky on here next week, and Bucky's going to talk about community banking on top of blockchains. And what is Cosmos Cash if it's not community banking on top of blockchains? You can easily imagine your community bank down the street, whether you live in America, Europe, or somewhere in Asia, adopting a framework like this, and then suddenly being able to offer you financial products from anywhere in the interchain, utilizing all of this fantastic technology that we talk about. And that's really the power of what Andrea is doing. And it's the regulatory side, not native for a lot of my audience. And for me, even it's not what I think about most days. But that's what you think about day in and day out. And this is the hard work that's going to be necessary to take the adoption of this technology from kind of this niche group of enthusiasts to the broader world. And that work extremely important. With that in mind, and sort of what you've been talking about, I saw that you guys had a chance to present Cosmos Cash to the ECB. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. So as you may know now, on top of traditional cryptos and stable coins or asset-backed cryptos, central bank digital currencies are a hot topic. So this implies
CBDCs, they have their own acronym.
Yeah. So the thing is that certain countries already took quite a proactive approach in launching their CBDC, but at the European level, the European Central Bank published in the last month interesting papers following a consultation on the opportunity to launch a digital euro, being this linked to blockchain or not. So it seems that the blockchain part is something that the ECB is considering quite closely, and let's say organized an interesting workshop with Cosmos and us on trying to understand what Cosmos can bring to the table, trying to understand better the technology of Cosmos. And during that interesting event with the Cosmos guys, we explained not only what actually Cosmos technology can offer, but at the same time, how Cosmos technology is already applied to Cosmos Cash in terms of its development and its release in the months to come. So the idea is, hey, we don't only have a superior technology, but also such technology is applied on a product which will be compliant with EU law, and at the same time is not something inconsistent or which would go against a central bank digital currency, but otherwise, because it would be an additional means of bridging the crypto space with the traditional payment and investment services industry as well. So
yeah, and I think one of the things that is really powerful about the Cosmos ecosystem, as opposed to a lot of other ones, is the energy efficiency of the Cosmos protocol. And I think especially as we look at this really hot summer that I think folks all around the world are experiencing right now, global warming becoming more and more a part of the policy conversation, and the headlines about Bitcoin's energy use are there every day. This is going to be a really important differentiator and selling point for Cosmos, the sustainability.
Very much indeed, because sustainability is another very hot topic as well, which actually shouldn't be seen just as a buzzword when speaking about ESG and sustainability, but rather as a necessity and as a moral imperative, but also as an economic imperative, because all the new laws on sustainability are reshaping traditional financial services and will impact heavily on also the real economy, because a lot of capital allocators will be pushed towards ESG compliant firms. This is in fact something which, as you saw already from all the Elon Musk and Bitcoin discussion, something which will impact the crypto space as well, very heavily.
Yep.
So only ESG friendly crypto players, in my view, will thrive in the future, because there is also another topic, which is the scalability. So I am a firm believer of the crypto economy for the years to come. This would imply that in future there will be more cryptos, there will be more crypto users, so there will be a widespread adoption of blockchain and crypto. This would imply that if only protocols which are energy intensive are used, then we might have a new problem to an already quite stressed environmental framework as of today.
Yeah, and I think that especially as these things kind of get adoption, it is going to be increasingly important that we keep the energy footprint low. And I do think also, if you look at sort of the way that crypto protocols take energy as opposed to sort of a traditional bank mainframe, I think we compare really favorably to the way that banks manage a lot of their internal books now.
Yeah, definitely.
Another really key feature of the Cosmos Cash protocol is this idea of a fiat bridge, i.e. a bridge between the crypto world and the fiat world. And, it's not just at one point, one bank. It's the idea of creating a sort of replicable bridge. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that feature and how Cosmos Cash sort of satisfies those regulatory needs?
Yeah, for sure. So the main idea behind this bridging feature is, first of all, to offer an instrument to existing regulated players who can issue digital money, but at the same time, new players who want to enter into the traditional payment services space, but embracing as well the crypto revolution. How to do it? First of all, is to make the life of those players easier, because each and every time you touch crypto, you might encounter regulatory scrutiny. So as a regulated player ourselves, there is nothing better than having a protocol which already embeds regulatory compliance, especially under an anti-money laundering perspective, which is another key aspect of ensuring the mass-wide adoption of cryptos over traditional assets. So our work was to literally imagine an ecosystem where you have traditional crypto skeptical players who have to deal with crypto and are full of criticism against crypto because of allegedly higher money laundering risks, regulatory uncertainty, with instead the crypto economy which is going to develop. So if we think about security token offerings now, it's very problematic to purchase a security token using an asset which is very volatile. Because if I have to pick Ethereum and or Bitcoin with their volatility for purchasing a stock, which is or might be tokenized in future, the whole idea of investing in a stock for getting +2 or 3% is gone because I suffer from a very high currency risk, which might be also true in the case of euro or USD, but FX fluctuation are not comparable. So the idea of having something which can bridge these two spaces, and this something being widely adopted and not just restricted to one issuer, but multiple issuers forming part of the same network, which will be subject to governance rules clearly and transparently, then having the possibility to issue the same product and allow users, existing users perhaps, of a regulated clients or new users of a new issuer, and smoothly and frictionless, for a frictionless and smooth exchange of value, then it can be very, very useful, because not only it can be a way for connecting people from multiple parts around the globe, but at the same time allowing them to have access to more products, having a cheaper access to existing products, and ultimately develop new products themselves.
Yeah, this is, I think, what you're describing might be really alien for traditional finance folks, but for folks working in the open source software world, these are kind of a lot of the benefits that people traditionally see in open source software. It's this common standard that is not being monetized by anyone individually, but all these actors can kind of take advantage of individually and be able to leverage in a way that is really impactful. So we do have a ton of questions, by the way. So I'm going to go ahead and start digging into a couple of those. Praveed, who asks some of the best questions on Conversations with Jack, and thank you, Praveed, has a couple of questions. One, can we assume an IBC connected token via a Cosmos Cash chain? Can it be compliant? So the way that I read this question is, how will compliance over IBC work in Cosmos Cash?
Okay, so that's definitely a good point. So the main idea is that Cosmos Cash will embed per se, so within the same protocol, compliance standards, such that once you as an issuer adopt the Cosmos Cash protocol, then the Cosmos Cash protocol, and as it has been written and together with the security it embeds, will be for sure compliant with IBC connected token to the extent those tokens will be whitelisted within the parameters of Cosmos Cash.
Yeah. So that's a great question. That's a great question. And then the next piece of this is, can an NFT and community chain like OmniFlix use Cosmos Cash to enable the trade of NFT and social tokens in a compliant way? So I guess this question is about existing chains upgrading to Cosmos Cash at some point in the future. Is that something that you guys are thinking about supporting?
So if that's the question, then the answer is definitely yes, in the sense that because generally NFTs are purchased, or social tokens are purchased by other cryptos which are very volatile, then adopting Cosmos Cash can be one solution for meeting two results. One, stability, and the second one, having already KYC the players purchasing these NFTs and social tokens. Because another aspect, if we are speaking about NFTs, something on which we as Amagis are quite working and following closely, NFTs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting topic indeed, and NFTs will fall soon under the notion of virtual asset and as such subject to AML controls, and platform dealing with NFTs will be subject to AML controls as well. If you manage through the use of Cosmos Cash, be sure that the person or the company using Cosmos Cash for purchasing such NFTs is already whitelisted and as such is deemed to be a compliant user with the existing AML framework, then NFT platform can definitely leverage on this aspect.
Awesome. Okay, another question, which I think is an interesting one. Umesh asks, will there be internal support other than grants to execute Cosmos Cash in a country like India? So i.e., right now you are making Cosmos Cash primarily for the European regulatory environment. Are there plans to expand it outside of that regulatory environment to satisfy other needs?
So this is definitely something which is being thought about. So we are now starting with the core country which is implementing multi-state regulation for enabling the launch of such cryptos. There are, of course, other countries which are in pipeline, so where we need to carry out an assessment on how to make it compliant with the regulatory framework of such countries. I'm thinking about the US, for example, which is a big market, and of course India, given its importance as a country, as a jurisdiction, and as a market. So this is something which will not be there at T0, but for sure will be something that will be rolled out in the coming months, I think.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome, and Andrea, that's kind of we're coming to the end of the show here, and that's the last of the questions. Do you have anything else to say to the audience before we wrap here?
Yes. So my invite to the audience is to think about what's next when you think about crypto. So there will be for sure in the coming months dramatical change in the approach of states and authorities toward crypto. So it will be a space which will be even more controlled and will be very closely, I think, approaching the treatment of some financial assets. So I think that the regulation shouldn't be seen as something boring and which may stifle innovation, but rather something which instead will promote its wider use and will attract also those skepticals because of the enhanced protection and safeguards which will be implemented. So this is, let's say, a message of hope and of support of the actions which are being taken, and you will see that Cosmos Cash will for sure be one of these enabler of innovation and disruptor, as it has been already in the past.
That's a great message, Andrea, and that's something that I really believe too. We need to embrace this regulation. We need to try to learn to work with it, and we need to build products for it. Thank you very much for joining us today, Andrea, and I want to again say thank you very much to our sponsors, Sommelier Finance, as well as OmniFlix Media. Please go check out both of those projects. We'll have more information for that soon. Awesome. And I believe next week, let me see here, I think we have Bucky coming next week. So Ethan Buckman, one of the founders of Cosmos, will be on the show next week. We will be talking a bunch of similar things to this, I would imagine. Funny enough, local currencies and sustainable finance. So looking forward to that show, and see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.